Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News, and here are some of the top stories we've been following. A former Medicine Hat pastor is arrested in the U.S. on multi-million-dollar fraud charges. Plus, the criminal trial for Freedom Convoy organizers Tamara Leach and Chris Barber enters its final chapter. And an earthquake hits Southern California, swaying buildings, rattling dishes, and setting off car alarms.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks for joining us. 11 months since it first began, the trial of Freedom Convoy organizers Tamara Leach and Chris Barber has entered its closing arguments today. The two are faced with charges of mischief, intimidation, and counseling others to break the law during the Freedom Convoy protests in Ottawa in 2022. Leach, who lives in Alberta, and Barber, who is from Saskatchewan, were among several organizers who brought a huge number of demonstrators in big rig trucks to Ottawa 2.5 years ago to protest post-pandemic, the pandemic-era public health restrictions and vaccine mandates. Their criminal trial began in September of 2023 and has been plagued with delays that have dragged the proceedings on for nearly a year. The court has scheduled 3 days to hear the final arguments in the case, as well as several extra days next week in case the arguments go long. To break down the case in more detail is Laura Osman with the Canadian Press.
Just to give you a sense of how complicated this case is, this all goes back to the Freedom Convoy protest that happened 2 years ago. Tamara Leach and Chris Barber were among the original group of organizers that brought thousands of big rig trucks, countless demonstrators to Ottawa, and most officials expected them to stay only a few days. They ended up entrenching themselves in the streets for about 3 weeks. And so really what this case turns on is how culpable Tamara Leach and Chris Barber are for the actions of those thousands and thousands of protesters who came to Ottawa and remained there, causing what several judges have deemed to be acts of mischief. And so Tamara Leach and Chris Barber are both charged with mischief, counseling mischief, intimidation, counseling others to commit several other crimes. Here in Ottawa, we see countless protests every year. It's an everyday occurrence. What was different about this one was that it lasted a long time. And so really, I think what we're going to be hearing from the defense later this week is sort of more of that kind of argument that Tamara Leach and Chris Barber didn't break the law themselves. They just happened to organize a protest where other folks did.
A former Medicine Hat preacher with ties to Lethbridge and Calgary, who was charged with fraud and failed to appear in court last November, has been arrested in the U.S. 68-year-old Ronald Aikens was first charged back in 2023 after illegally acquiring over $35 million from more than 1,400 investors in a real estate scheme, including using retirement savings from parishioners. He then diverted $10 million for his own private investments. The case was delayed for a decade due to multiple factors. According to the Alberta Securities Commission, on the day he was due for sentencing back on November 6th of 2023, he instead crossed into the U.S. from Montana. But the ASC announced on Monday that U.S. officials arrested Aikens on August the 8th. He is to be transported to Calgary and appear before the Alberta Court of Justice this Thursday. He was initially facing a 5-year prison sentence before his sentencing date last November. Well, officials are cautioning Jasper residents about things to look out for following an announcement that they'll be allowed to return to their evacuated community on Friday. Key infrastructure like schools and the water treatment plant were spared by the wildfires that forced the entire town to flee last month, but utility services could still be hit and miss. Hospital services are not fully back. Garbage collection plans are still being worked on, and parts of the town are under a boil water advisory. There are also no accommodations for those in the 358 homes and businesses leveled by the fire. And Western Canada isn't the only place that's burning. Here is footage from the aftermath of a major wildfire in the fringes of Athens, Greece this week. The blaze was increased by winds, which have now died down. Athens area firefighters are taking advantage of the break in the wind, hoping to contain the remains of the fire that left at least one person dead. Aid has also been sent from Turkey, despite its frequently tense relations with Greece. And a large forest fire continued to burn on Tuesday on top of Mount Zelengora in Bosnia's Sutjeska National Park. The fire that broke out 2 days ago has destroyed trees and forests that had been untouched for hundreds of years. Canadians are being urged to leave Lebanon while they can as violence escalates between Hezbollah and Israel. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly warns the armed conflict could soon affect people's ability to leave the country and Canada's capacity to provide consular services. She says people should avoid traveling there, and Canadians there now should get out while commercial flights are available. We speak with Brian Lilly, Toronto Sun columnist, who gave us his thoughts on the conflict escalating between Hezbollah and Israel and the fact that Canadians are still in Lebanon.
They have been dropping rockets, thousands of rockets and missiles, very accurate, high-level munitions into Israel. We saw that killing of more than 10 children on a soccer field a few weeks ago. And now there's talk of the war escalating. At this point, you should have been out of Lebanon. You've had plenty of opportunities. So if war breaks out now, we shouldn't be doing an evacuation plan for civilians. And yet the Prime Minister at a news conference on Monday admitted that it was there. They keep trying to downplay it every time that it comes out because they know it's controversial based on what happened the last time, but they appear basically hell-bent on doing it.
Catch more of my interview with Brian Lilly coming up later in the program. A week-long manhunt after a fatal rural Alberta shooting continues with one of the suspects now in custody. RCMP arrested 35-year-old Arthur Wayne Penner in Edmonton last night. He's charged with first-degree murder and the attempted murder of a second person. An arrest warrant has also been issued for 28-year-old Elijah Blake Strawberry on a charge of second-degree murder. Police says he is considered armed and dangerous. This began when two workers were shot last Tuesday, August 6th, at a rural intersection in Rocky View County, and a county truck was stolen from the scene. The victim who died is a father from Airdrie, Alberta. The Alberta government says it's shutting down 3 daycares in Calgary immediately, even though their probationary licenses were set to expire at the end of this month. The province says all 3 daycares were being operated by little scholars, and the probationary licenses were due to previous infractions. It says ongoing issues and increased risk led to closure orders being issued now. The province did not provide details on what the safety risk was, but it says the closures will affect almost 300 children. The residents of the town of Banff have said no to making the pedestrian zone on Banff Avenue a permanent fixation on the town every summer. In a narrow vote of 1,328 people voted no on keeping the pedestrian zone yearly from May long weekend until Thanksgiving, compared to the 1,194 people who said yes. The number one concern for residents is the congestion of traffic throughout the town, especially with vehicles being forced to move to neighborhoods for parking.
The whole town is planned and designed around traffic circulation going down Banff Avenue and across the bridge to the more than 1,100 hotel rooms on the far side. When you block that and create a pedestrian zone, the traffic doesn't disappear. It just gets diverted into what used to be quiet residential streets on the sides of the avenue. And that has created really uncomfortable situations for the residents of those streets. You also have the difficulty for the people on the south side who are concerned about the additional obstacle to traffic coming out of the south side. And in particular, I guess because of all the news coverage that we've had over recent years, they are concerned about their evacuation route.
The mayor on a live stream on Tuesday said the town will look for more options on limiting vehicles on the town's limited road network, as she claims that supporting pedestrian accessibility is in the town's future. Town council will have a meeting on August 26 to officially pass the bylaw to overturn the pedestrian zone, in which dismantling of the zone will begin the day after. Well, Lethbridge police conducted a targeted traffic enforcement over the weekend, which saw police issue 27 tickets and 10 warnings, primarily for speeding, stunting, and equipment violations. 3 vehicles were also towed, and 1 was seized under provisions of the Traffic Safety Act. LPS, in a statement, said that since 2021, they've received hundreds of complaints of loud vehicles and high-risk driving behaviors on Mayor McGrath Drive and Shearing Industrial Park. In response, LPS says reminding residents that they are continuing to monitor traffic behavior in those areas with zero tolerance to those who violate the Traffic Safety Act. To recognize people and organizations that build bonds of respect and trust between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, the City of Lethbridge will hold Reconciliation Awards. Echo Nowak, Indigenous Relations Specialist with the City of Lethbridge, says this is the second year the city is hosting the Reconciliation Awards. Nowak explains why these awards are important and what the categories are.
Is important because I think a lot of people don't know where to start. I think they're afraid to start or afraid of doing the wrong thing. So I think showing the community what is being done, it can spark interest in maybe joining them or reaching out to them and seeing how they can also be involved. Anything that they can do, whether it be just being an advocate for Indigenous peoples is the best way to start, I guess. We have 7 categories, so it's educational, not-for-profit sector, private sector, community leaders, Indigenous leaders, and youth.
And within each of those categories, what we're hoping to see and showcase is the strength of our community. We need to be loud about the fantastic work so people know, hey, you know what? I know that person. I'm going to connect with them and ask them what their steps were to start reconciliation.
Now, Nowak says community can nominate people until Friday, September the 6th, and Reconciliation Awards ceremonies will be held on Monday, September the 23rd. The non-residential area of Coaldale is growing by leaps and bounds. According to Cameron Mills, Director of Growth and Investment for the town of Coaldale, over the past 6 years, the total value of Coaldale's business community has doubled. He says it's jumping from more than $84 million to over $168 million, adding that this figure was calculated within the period of 2018 and 2023. Mills explains what the reason for this rapid growth could be.
A lot of credit needs to go to our elected officials over this period of time. They've really prioritized economic development. And in so doing, one of the things they've done a really good job at is keeping our commercial tax rates quite low, even in the face of very severe economic pressures and economic challenges that all municipalities have gone through over the last few years. The other 2 factors, the crime rate is quite low. Businesses feel like they're very safe when they come out here. And then also, administratively, we take a lot of pride in being an easy place to do business. So we keep red tape to a minimum, make sure that businesses are free to run and to organize their business without needing to constantly interact with the town. And we know there's a lot more growth coming. So we recently announced, Newcold announced a $200 million investment into our business community. That's not reflected in these figures, so that'll come forward over the next couple of years. So we're going to see this number continue to double, likely over the next few years. And really, we've been focusing a lot on economic development here in Coaldale and try to build a business base here within the town rather than just being sort of dependent on other areas of the region.
Mills says the analysis made a comparison with other towns of similar size and neighboring municipalities like Blackfalds, Drumheller, Edson, Ennisville, Lethbridge, Lethbridge County, Ponoka, and Tabor. Well, measuring your weight is an important factor when considering your health. According to Statistics Canada, the prevalence of obesity in Canada has increased over the past 2 decades. Research also indicates that self-reported weight and height data from the 2022 Canadian Community Health Survey indicate that nearly 1 in 3 Canadians aged 18 years or older, or 30% of them, were obese in 2022. A Lethbridge woman tells us her story of overcoming obesity.
Going through a weight loss journey is not a light burden to bear, especially when fatigue comes easily from just walking. Dawn Puckett, a woman from Lethbridge, lived this experience. Her weight loss journey began 15 years ago. However, in 2022, she made a commitment to herself to reach her ideal weight according to the medical recommendations. Puckett gives us more details about her journey.
My official weigh-in was close to 200, and then I lost from there. I knew I was overweight. I knew I should do something about it. As I got older, my health is going to kick in there. If I can't walk, if I can't do things, like what's going to happen? I tried myself. I even had weight control things that you could use to curb your appetite, but they don't work. Not for me anyway. You're eating a lot. You just can't all of a sudden stop. It's something that comes with time and patience. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't healthy for my lungs. It wasn't healthy for my heart. It wasn't healthy, period.
Puckett was aware that she needed help. That's why she decided to take seriously the recommendations offered to her in the support group and thus achieve her goal.
It's just quantities. A lot of it is quantities. Being careful of what you eat. And sweets are not the thing to eat. You can say, I'll just have a donut tonight. No, you won't. And I thought, okay, I'm going to use diet pop. Still same difference. It's not good. And another thing that really helped me was walking. If you enjoy swimming, then swimming's a good sport. It's what's good for you will help you. It's a slow process. For me, it was. You don't want to lose quickly because it'll probably come back quickly.
Puckett, how many pounds have you lost since then?
I lost 85 pounds. I'm at the goal I want. I eat 3 meals a day and I do not feel hungry.
She was so successful in her weight loss journey that she was named the Alberta Queen of her TOPS weight loss program. Puckett did not develop any obesity-related illness. She is a healthy woman and now with the right pounds for her size. For Bridge City News, I'm Heidi Echavarria.
Yesterday, former U.S. President Donald Trump and billionaire Elon Musk took the internet by storm by hosting a conversation on X, formerly Twitter. According to the official X account, during the time of the interview, Donald Trump's space received 73 million views and 4 million posts about the interview, generating a same night a total of 998 million views. The interview caps off Trump's return to the app for the first time in 3 years since being removed after the January 6th Capitol incident. It was not without its issues, however, as the interview began 40 minutes late due to what Musk claimed was an apparent cyber attack. The two discussed topics from Trump's assassination attempt, his policies, and collaboration between the two in the event of Trump's re-election. Well, check out this footage. It's the moment an earthquake shakes homes in the Los Angeles area. The 4.4 magnitude earthquake was strongly felt Monday from the Los Angeles area all the way down to San Diego, swaying buildings, rattling dishes, and setting off car alarms. Wow, have you ever been in an earthquake? They're kind of scary. No quakes here in southern Alberta, thank goodness, but we could see a light chance of showers expected this evening with a risk of thunderstorms and then clearing overnight. But temperatures are soaring again, and I'll be right back after this short break with a full look at the weather. Welcome back. We've got a slight chance of showers expected this evening, along with the risk of a thunderstorm and then clearing overnight. Also, we could see those wind gusts up to 40 kilometers per hour this evening. But as we get into tomorrow, Wednesday, lots of sunshine, 28 for a high, up to 29 on Thursday with clear skies. We could see some rainfall on Friday with a high of 24 degrees, and then a beautiful 28-degree day on Saturday with clear skies, up to 29 on Sunday, and then Monday, 30 degrees. So we are going to see that 30 again before the month is over, I promise you. Average high for this time of year, 26, average low, 11, 36 was our high temperature. That was the record. That happened back in 2001 on this day, and on this day back in 2005, it was the lowest on record, which was only 2 degrees. Okay, sun rose this morning at 6:20. We're looking at a sunset this evening of 8:51 p.m., so that gives us 15 hours and 31 minutes of daylight. Okay, on the west coast tomorrow, we're seeing a chance of drizzle in Victoria, 21 for a high there. 22, the expected high tomorrow in Vancouver. Could see some cloud coverage. 26 for a high in Edmonton. Calgary starting out sunny, and then we could see a 30% chance of showers in the afternoon with some late afternoon thunderstorms. High of 23 there in Calgary. For the rest of the prairies, we're seeing relatively the same type of system going through there. We're seeing clear skies in the morning, cloud coverage by the afternoon. Could see showers, risk of thunderstorms in all three of these prairie cities. Saskatoon sitting at 27 tomorrow, 29 in Regina, and a high of 25 degrees in Winnipeg. As we get to the central part of the country, Toronto seeing clear skies, high of 28 degrees, 29 expected in Ottawa with same thing. Mix of sun and cloud, and then 30% chance of showers, risk of thunderstorm. Clear skies, though, in Montreal with that lovely, beautiful 29 degrees. As we get to Atlantic Canada, same thing, starting out sunny, clouds kind of moving in a little bit, looking at chance of showers, risk of thunderstorms. That's basically the story for Fredericton and Halifax tomorrow, both sitting at 24 degrees. 22 for Charlottetown with clear skies. And then we are seeing some drizzle expected tomorrow in St. John's with 20 to 40 K winds, 15 for a high there only. So there you have it. That is your forecast. Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City have started blocking shipments ahead of a possible strike or lockout. An internal CN memo obtained by the Canadian Press says the company has started embargoing some hazardous goods from the U.S., with more commodities to be barred this week if no agreement is reached with workers. This comes after Canadian Pacific Kansas City said Friday it would temporarily ban dangerous materials traffic to ensure nothing winds up stranded on railway tracks in the event of job action. The two railways warned last week they would lock out some 9,300 engineers, conductors, and yard workers as of August 22nd, unless common ground is found on new contracts. The board of directors at United Farmers of Alberta has named Fred Toon as UFA's new president and CEO, effective January 1st, 2025. UFA's current president and CEO, Scott Bolton, will be retiring from his position on December the 31st. Toon joined UFA as Executive Vice President and CFO in 2020. During his time with the cooperative, he was instrumental in developing and executing UFA's strategy and managed an extensive portfolio. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 219 points to 22,398. The Dow was up 408 points to 39,765. The S&P 500 was up 90 points to 5,434 points, and the Nasdaq was up 407 points to 17,187. West Texas Intermediate oil was down $1.71 to $78.35 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 4 cents to $2.14 US. Gold was down 3 cents to $2,462 US an ounce, and silver was down 16 cents to $27.80 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $7.42 per bushel, barley is at $5.61, canola is at $13.35, and corn is at $6.99 per bushel. Live cattle August contract was up 68 cents to $184. Feeder cattle August contract was up $2.07 to $246.47, and lean hogs August contract went up $1.32 to $102.80. And the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to hit 73 cents dollars US.
Recapping one of our top stories, 11 months since it first began, the trial for Freedom Convoy organizers Tamara Leach and Chris Barber has entered its closing arguments today. The two are faced with charges of mischief, intimidation, and counseling others to break the law during the Freedom Convoy protests in Ottawa in 2022. Leach and Barber were among several organizers who brought a huge number of demonstrators in big rig trucks to Ottawa 2.5 years ago to protest pandemic-era public health restrictions and vaccine mandates. Coming up, how effective is the government's vetting policy? Between allowing a known terrorist to become a citizen and appointing an anti-Semite to monitor speech on the internet for the Canadian Human Rights Commission, there might be a lot of questions to answer. We dive into all of it next with Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly. And hey, when you see news happening in your community, to be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also check out our website anytime to see a number of our stories and interviews. When it comes to Canada on the world stage of international relations, it seems our government has been somewhat absent. We're going to explain why the feds have been silent on certain issues, plus how effective is the government's vetting policy. Well, we're going to dive into all of this right now with my guest, Brian Lilly of the Toronto Sun. Brian, welcome back. Great to have you on once again.
Good to be here.
Okay, so Brian, here we go. He resigned before he ever even started his job, but the question is, did he get paid? Who are we talking about? We're talking about Birzu Datani. He was appointed to head up the Canadian Human Rights Commission and oversee policing speech on the internet, but he resigned abruptly on Monday. So, Brian, what happened?
Well, this is a guy who clearly the government didn't vet properly in a very important position. Look, I disagree with the Online Harms Act, because it's going to clamp down on free speech in this country and in a very dangerous way. But they've given responsibility for overseeing how that's done to the head of the Canadian Human Rights Commission, and that was going to be Birju Datani. This is a guy who it took people looking him up online mere minutes to find anti-Semitic comments in the past and questionable actions. And this is going to be the guy that determines human rights issues, that as I said, polices speech online. It caused an uproar. The government tried to downplay it for several days, a couple of weeks actually. Then they called for a third-party investigation. They hired an outside law firm that looks into reputation, that looks into people's backgrounds. They got that report and put Mr. Datani on leave. So he was supposed to start his job last week. And then they announced that he wasn't going to. He was on leave. We believe that he was paid while he was on leave. And then Monday, he abruptly resigns because the report the government got back was not good to him. In fact, it included a section on him not detailing a name he went by for a while, where he published and made some comments that were questionable at best, was Mujahid, which means follower, go for the way of Allah, basically a crusader for Allah. That, in and of itself was, should have been saying, okay, why did this guy that just converted to Islam take that name and then make comments that people considered anti-Semitic? And is he appropriate for this job? I think the clear answer is no. But so all of this comes out. Now we need to know, did he get paid just for the couple days that he was there, $900 a day, or is he getting his full six-figure salary? Is he getting it for a year, for 2 years? Is he getting it for his full 5-year term? These are questions we really need to know. But this is another example of the Trudeau government screwing up when they don't look into who they're appointing to positions.
Right. And Brian, this isn't the first time the Liberals have had problems with appointments either. So does the government have trouble vetting people properly?
Oh, clearly. It's like they don't have the Google. I say it that way to make fun of them. It's Google, folks. Open up your web browser, punch in somebody's name, start reading what they've said. and then say, okay, well, what have they done, and look through it. We can look at someone like Laith Marouf, who was hired or given a grant for his organization to go out and teach broadcasters in this country, like Bridge City News, how not to be racist. Well, Laith Marouf has made some vile anti-Semitic comments. Um, I believe that you can say the man is racist based on the comments I've read and seen. That's how I would describe them. And you're going to teach broadcasters how to have an anti-racism strategy? That's insane. You look at someone like Julie Payette, the former governor general. She was appointed. It took journalists 45 minutes to find out that she'd been involved in a car accident where she was driving the vehicle and she ran over a blind woman. Now, she was found not at fault, but okay, that may be a red flag. Maybe you look into it. Government didn't know. She was involved in a domestic violence complaint. She was not the victim in that domestic violence complaint, where police in Maryland were called to her home. So can go through again and again, and this is a government that just sits around and says, "Hey, yeah, that person be good." Well, have you looked them up? Obviously, no, they don't.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm going to go on the line on the Google there and look all of this up here, Brian. Okay, now, Brian, one person who clearly wasn't vetted properly is Ahmad El-Didi. So he's the father in the father-son duo arrested as part of a terrorist plot foiled by police. Now, this man was allegedly seen in a 2015 ISIS video. So, Brian, what is the Prime Minister saying about how this man was able to enter Canada and be granted citizenship?
Well, obviously, he's saying that his government is taking this very seriously, which tells you they're not. If they were taking it seriously, he would not have been allowed into the country. The allegation about the ISIS video was that he was mutilating a fellow human being who'd been, I don't know if they were tied to a cross or nailed to a cross. And you remember those ISIS videos, they would use crucifixion quite often. And he's doing unspeakable acts to this man. How did he get into the country? Was he brought in as part of the Syrian refugee resettlement program? If so, clearly they weren't doing the vetting. We were trying to bring in people who were fleeing ISIS, Jeanette. We were bringing in people who were fleeing the terrorists. And it looks like maybe, well, we may have brought one of them in, which is horrific. We should have learned from the past, because that's what we did with the Rwandan genocide. We brought in people fleeing the genocide, and we brought people who committed the genocide with them and couldn't get rid of them once they were in this country. And now we've got Mr. El-Didi now facing terrorism charges. It's very disturbing. Pierre Poilievre has called the government out on it. The House of Commons has struck a committee to look into it. I think the government it's going to come out that this is on them. They're trying to blame Stephen Harper, but it will come out that it's on them. If they're smart, they dump all this information out before the House of Commons comes back in a month's time. Otherwise, this is going to dominate question period and look very bad on the government.
Yeah, and the question is, how many more have they let in? This is just somebody, like one person that we know about. It's really scary. And of course, according to reports, the reason the plot was discovered by the police in the first place was a tip from an ally. So is this something that we should be concerned about, or something normal?
A bit of both. It's normal for allies to provide tips to each other. It's obviously a sign that our security systems are not working properly. You know, they're focused on truck drivers in Ottawa, not on terror plots. That appears to be the problem. We should always be thankful that we've got our Five Eyes partners. And in talking to people, the assumption is that this was the Americans, but we haven't confirmed that yet. So it's not bad that they tipped us off. It's bad that that is continually how we are finding out things that are happening in our own country. That the Americans or the Brits or somebody else is informing us, hey, you should be looking into this. Do you have this person monitored? Because we think you should, and here's why. Obviously, police did their job once they were tipped off. They monitored the father-son duo. They arrested them at a hotel just north of Toronto when they were allegedly planning the attack. Son says he has nothing to do with it, but they were arrested together in what was described as a plot against Toronto Police would not explicitly say, but it's understood that it was aimed at Toronto's Jewish community.
Oh, scary stuff there. Okay, yeah, switching gears a little bit here. Qatar and Egypt this week said Hamas leaders wanted a ceasefire deal ahead of the critical summit happening this week. But now negotiations between Israel and Hamas are off the table after Hamas walked away from the deal. Now, there was a statement issued by U.S. President Joe Biden along with the leaders of Britain, France, Germany, Italy, but not Canada. So, Brian, why was Canada absent on this?
Because we're offside of our allies on this. This isn't the first time. And the last time they tried to say, well, this is not a statement of the G7 or of NATO allies. This is a statement of the Quint. And I said, the Quint? I had to look it up. I covered Ottawa for years. I had to go and I talked to people who worked in foreign affairs. I talked to former foreign affairs ministers and said, have you ever seen statements from the Quint? They said, no. This is not a thing. This is just because Canada is being excluded. We've been making statements alongside Australia and New Zealand that go much further in criticizing Israel and not criticizing Hamas strongly enough. So we're on a different team than the Americans, the Brits, the French, the Germans, and the Italians. They're standing together. We're with the Australians and the New Zealanders, the Kiwis, off making our own noise that nobody's paying attention to, by the way. So this is, under the Trudeau government. We've been sidelined by our allies time and again because we're simply not taken seriously, or we've got a totally different position, which isn't a good place for us to be.
Also, not a good place for us to be. Canadians have been warned about being in the Middle East for some time now, but despite that, many Canadian citizens remain in Lebanon. So Prime Minister Justin Trudeau issued a call for them to leave, saying if war does break out, it will be difficult to leave because he still admitted there is a government evacuation plan. So why is this?
If you're in Lebanon at this point, it is because you want to be there. And there are a lot of Canadian citizens who live in Lebanon. They don't live here. They, for whatever reason, took out Canadian citizenship and then went back to Lebanon. We saw that in the 2006 war, where we evacuated thousands and thousands of people at a huge cost. And within 6 months of the evacuation, almost all of them were back in Lebanon. So we shouldn't be devising an evacuation plan at this point. We devised an evacuation plan for people in the Palestinian territories in Israel in the wake of October 7th, before the war fully broke out, but after the Hamas attacks, because that was a surprise attack. Hamas wasn't going around saying, we're launching an attack on this date. If you're a Canadian or another foreign national, you should get out. So we got people out in that position, and we've gotten people out of other war zones. Hezbollah, which is part of the Lebanese government and which controls vast swaths along Israel's northern border with Lebanon, they have been dropping rockets, thousands of rockets and missiles, very accurate, high-level munitions into Israel. We saw that killing of more than 10 children on a soccer field a few weeks ago. And now there's talk of the war escalating. At this point, you should have been out of Lebanon. You've had plenty of opportunities. So if war breaks out now, we shouldn't be doing an evacuation plan for civilians. And yet the Prime Minister at a news conference on Monday admitted that it was there. They keep trying to downplay it every time that it comes out because they know it's controversial based on what happened the last time, but they appear basically hell-bent on doing it.
Yeah, and I hate to say this, but who knows who they'll let in after what we've seen just happen, right? Okay, so Brian, the latest battle between Justin Trudeau and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is over tariffs on Chinese goods like steel, aluminum, and electric vehicles. So why are the two men who generally talk about the benefits of free trade now talking tariffs?
So there's a few reasons behind this. One is that the Americans brought in tariffs on Chinese goods, and they want us to follow suit. And being good NAFTA partners, and America is the one area that we don't want to annoy in our trading relationship, we should probably follow suit. But there's also the fact that, yeah, both men generally believe in free trade, so do I, but what we have with China is not free trade. China does not allow the same kind of access that we have. They subsidize their products and then dump them into our markets at below market prices. There's these new $12,000 US electric vehicles. Apparently, it cost about $25,000 to make them. Why are they selling them so cheap in the US? The Chinese government subsidizing them, trying to make sure that as governments push for an electric vehicle mandate, that people buy Chinese cars, and then China becomes the dominant player in electric vehicles. That's not something that we should be allowing to happen. And yet that's what China is doing. They're trying to basically break up our manufacturing ability in North America, in Canada, in the United States. So we should be doing this. The Biden administration wants Trudeau to get on board. There's a split within Trudeau's government between Melanie Joly, the foreign affairs minister, who was just in China and who's been called on the carpet by China and told to behave. Canada better behave was basically the message we were given. And so she doesn't want the tariffs. Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister, apparently does. And so that battle is ongoing. And we know if Donald Trump gets in November in the American election, there's probably going to be bigger tariffs. So we should get on board with this. We should have far less access to our markets for cheap Chinese goods that are subsidized. And, you only have free trade if you have a level playing field.
Yeah, and wasn't the federal government actually rewarding people for buying these Chinese EVs? I think they were giving out rebates,
a
right?
subsidy given directly to the Chinese companies. It's a horrible idea, and even big backers of EVs in this country have said this is a horrible policy and you have to stop it.
Wow. Brian, it looks like we're out of time here. Unfortunately, it goes so fast when I talk to you, but thanks so much for joining us once again today.
Thanks for having me.
There are always differing viewpoints when it comes to how our province should be run, where the focus should be. Is it healthcare, education, the economy? Sometimes there are groups which try to influence party policy one way or the other. A new group has been formed in Alberta which is trying to do just that. It is called the 1905 Committee. Joining us now to discuss this is Nadine Willwood. She's the co-founder of the 1905 Committee, and she joins us from beautiful Fort Macleod. Nadine, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you so much for having me, Hal. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. Now, where did the name 1905 Committee originate?
Well, I think that number is not unfamiliar to a lot of people. 1905 is when Alberta became a province. And when we were trying to find an appropriate name, I kept emphasizing, what if we could do it all over again? And then we kind of thought about, well, the beginning and where we're going. And 1905 Committee is what we came up with.
So tell us a bit about your background in provincial politics and explain why you felt the need to start up the 1905 Committee.
Absolutely. So my background provincially started actually from a federal perspective, and I had started doing some work with the People's Party of Canada in 2019, 2021. And then when Daniel Smith was elected the leader of the UCP, I thought we would see some true grassroots changes there. And I decided to throw my hat in the ring, actually for the Livingston-Macleod riding. And I was disqualified, regrettably, by the executive at the UCP. I guess I have very strong opinions, and that's not always popular with party politics. I'm not, I guess, as easy to control as they would like. And from there, my background is a chartered investment manager, so I've been obviously following economics for at least 2 decades, and of course, politics drives a lot of the economy. And so when politics sort of arose as an opportunity for me to get involved, I took kind of my background and meshed that a little bit with what I have been learning over the last 6 years. And thus we looked at what was missing, truly missing in the space as far as true representation by the people. And 1905 was born.
So did party officials with the UCP explain why you weren't able to run for the party?
Yeah, I have a long letter of reasons. I think the big one, honestly, was just they felt I could not fit in with their team as far as the party goes. My opinions around, things at the time. I have an aerospace and defense background. I have a lot of history and understanding as far as military industrial complex, and I had a slightly different view on Ukraine and how we should deal with that. They also didn't like the fact that, I'm very much, I guess, one of those freedom fighters a little bit as far as COVID was concerned. And not so much a freedom fighter. I just wanted to see the protection of individual rights maintained in our province. And I can go on with a long list. I won't bore you, but those were some of the controversial issues that they didn't want to deal with.
So Nadine, what are some of your core goals with the organization 1905 Committee?
So some of the core goals, really, I'd say that if you had to pick one, it's about leadership accountability. A promise made needs to be a promise kept. And it doesn't matter who I speak with from any different political background, they all agree that if you're going to campaign and you're going to run an election, you need to follow through once you've been elected on those promises. And so one of the policies I probably would think our most popular policy that we are now currently pushing here in the next UCP PM is leadership accountability. So you have 24 months to fulfill your campaign promises, verbal or written, doesn't matter. You made a promise, you have 24 months to keep it. If not, you go back to a leadership review, and now you have to account to the people who elected you as to why you did not fulfill those promises. So if there's one area I think that everybody can agree on in this province is we need more accountability from our government.
Nadine, you just recently launched. What kind of interest has your group been generating so far?
We have generated quite a bit of buzz, actually. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors, people trying to figure out how we fit into the political spectrum, which is great for us because, of course, it's really gotten the word out there. People know we're here and we exist. So it's been a lot of fun, very exciting. But the reality is, we've got Edmonton's attention. And I think that's really what we've been trying to do. And we are attracting people from all different political spectrums and all different backgrounds. Obviously, we have more of a conservative focus, but the principles, we are about principles and policy. And because we're about principles and policy, we really do appeal to a lot more people in a very unifying kind of way.
So how many members would you say you currently have, and are you receiving some good financial support so far?
We are getting lots of good financial support, small donations, some bigger donors as well. I wouldn't even begin to guess at this point. I've been so busy just really pushing the agenda, getting out to places like this. I haven't really focused on counting numbers. So we'll have to get back to you with that number.
Now, I'm curious to know, Nadine, are you getting a lot of people from the Take Back Alberta campaign maybe switching over to yours?
It's been interesting. We've had a lot of opposition in some respects from the Take Back Alberta. There seems to be this thought that we are trying to get rid of Danielle Smith. And there are very much fans of Danielle Smith. And for us, it's not about the leader. It's not about the party. It truly is about accountability. But because some people do feel threatened, I think it's kind of, got people's attention in some respects. We've become a target for some individuals to come after on the Take Back Alberta side. And then there's other people who have been really disenfranchised with the fact that Take Back Alberta has become a little bit more a David Parker organization. It served this province so well in so many ways in re-engaging the citizens politically. But I think where it missed out was it needed a broader base and a better foundation. It was sort of formed around one concept: get rid of Jason Kenney. And for us, it's about leadership accountability, and we're really going to focus on principles and policies. And I think when people understand that, I think some of the fear and some of the threat will go away to some of these other organizations. And we are really something that they can actually be a part of as well. We're not looking to replace anybody. We're just looking to kind of be this bigger umbrella tent where there's a place and a home for everyone.
So what is your current view of our Premier, Danielle Smith?
I think Danielle Smith has done some things well, but I think there's been a lot of campaign promises that have been made that just haven't been kept. And I think there's been some, in my opinion, poor judgment decisions made. We did a Redford survey poll, and a lot of people didn't agree with the fact that she appointed Alison Redford to a Crown Corporation. Of all the people in this province, as far as even conservatives, I think Alison Redford is one of the least liked. And I think that was a poor judgment decision on her part. She's promised tax reduction. She hasn't followed through on that. For me, it's about priority. If you're going to, talk about a high-speed train between Calgary and Edmonton before reducing taxes, as you have promised in your campaign, I think, again, that's a lack of judgment.
Let's talk about some of the campaign promises from our Premier Danielle Smith. One of those being amending the Canada-Alberta Cooperation on Immigration. Alberta does need people, but you believe perhaps similar to Quebec, we should be a little more cautious about who comes to live here in Alberta?
Absolutely. Economically, you have to have the economy able to keep up with the number of people that are coming into the province. And we have migration, I think, issues as well. We have a lot of people moving to Alberta because Danielle has rolled out the welcome mat. And she's even commented that we need 10 million, or she expects to see 10 million people in the province in the next 20 years. Housing, economy, jobs, we just do not have the capacity for that. And so I think we need to take a very realistic approach with what realistically we can accomplish, what we can do. And again, Quebec is a very distinct society, but so is the West. Alberta has a very specific, distinct culture, history, and I think we risk losing that by allowing too many people into the country without proper measures to integrate them properly into our society.
Now, Nadine, you would like to see the UCP get the province back to a flat tax. Why do you feel that's so important? And how soon would you like to see that implemented?
Well, two reasons, actually. We had an Alberta advantage for a long time, and it was one of the least expensive places to live, and business boomed here, entrepreneurs boomed, freedom really flourished. And I think if we could get back to that, and I think taxes is a huge part of it. Right now, Alberta is not an inexpensive place to live. We pay a lot in taxes. And I voted, instead of just reducing taxes, to go to a flat tax for two reasons. Not only does it keep more money in the pockets and the jeans of Albertans, but it also will help with political favors. If everybody is paying the exact same and everybody see one rule of law that applies to everybody equally, then it's very difficult for politicians to use tax dollars to gain political favor.
Now let's discuss leadership accountability for just a moment here. You believe the party brass should implement a mandatory leadership review 2 years after an election if campaign promises haven't been fulfilled. Who would really determine this?
I think if we put that into a policy at the UCP, at the NAGM, everybody votes on it, and we really push this through. Politicians honestly believe that they are held accountable once every 4 years at the polls. And the greatest amount of influence I think we as individuals have are at the AGMs and at the political party level. And so I think if we can, as a grassroots movement, we're supposed to be a grassroots organization, can push a policy like this, it holds politicians to account. The worst thing I think that can happen with a politician is they get too comfortable. And I think being a little uncomfortable and knowing there are people watching and now they are accountable for what they say and have to follow that through with appropriate action is the best way to return politics to a more grassroots, honest, open, transparent way of working.
With a new job, there's a probationary period. Some companies have 3 months, 6 months. Maybe we should do the same thing for our politicians.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. You and I are accountable for the jobs that we do. We have to be doing a good job. We have to be accountable for what we say. And if not, we need to either be replaced or we need to say, okay, what do we need to do to improve? And so this is a great way, I think, for everyday citizens to provide feedback to their politicians.
Now, your website declares constitutional convention Alberta resolves to initiate and promote constitutional reforms with other provinces, focusing on key priorities such as equalization, access to tidewater, and health transfer payments. How do you really envision this happening?
Well, I think everybody will agree that Alberta hasn't really gotten a fair deal with the federal government. And I don't think Ottawa is really ever going to sit down with us to discuss how we can get a truly fair deal. So I think the focus really needs to be speaking with much like what you're seeing with Saskatchewan now and Danielle Smith. They're kind of aligning, which is a more unified and a bigger camp to take on some of the federal policies. Now, if we can bring BC into that conversation and Manitoba into that conversation, I think that's the way to go. So Alberta trying to do it on its own, Saskatchewan trying to do it on its own. I don't think we're going to get really anywhere with that. So I think what we really need to do is have the conversation with the provincial premiers and really come up with those policies and then push those policies forward as a united force. And so constitutional convention, I think, is the right way to do that. It hasn't really been effective even in the US, but we have to start somewhere. And I think it's a good place to start the conversation.
Naheed Nenshi, the former Calgary mayor, is now the new leader of the Alberta NDP, and the race wasn't even close. He took something like 67,000 votes, about 86% of the vote. How should the UCP respond now to this, seems like a very popular candidate and the new leader of the Alberta NDP?
Well, I think realistically, the UCP has to play its own game. We have our own policies, we have our own viewpoints, and I think we really need to continue to grow our base, but not trying to win over the left. I think realistically, what we need to do is be really strong, really accountable, be open, transparent. And I think that's what people are looking for. I honestly believe people are so done with politics. Why? Because that's just politics. That's politicians. This is what they do. And I think we can do it better, and we need to do it better. And I think if we can honestly show people that politicians show that they're listening to what the people want, what people have to say, and get back to the proper role of government. And I think that's where a lot of people have gotten confused. There's a lot of benefits and a lot of political favors, but those are pet projects. Let's get back to basics, and let's be open and transparent. Danielle Smith promised when she was with the Wild Rose, smaller government, smaller spending. And what did she do? Bigger government, bigger spending. And I think people in Alberta would be happy to see a limited government that's restrained in its spending, keeping more dollars into the pockets of Albertans so that they can be the ones to grow the economy. Government's not productive. Businesses, individuals, that's where the productivity comes from. And as it's been pointed out so many times today, even the OECD, Canada is not a very good place to be right now as far as production goes. And I personally believe that's because government has just become too big and the budgets are just too large. And, the private sector through regulation has been beaten down, and we have to start removing those obstacles.
Nadine Wellwood is the co-founder of the 1905 Committee. Thanks so much for joining us today from beautiful Fort Macleod.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks so much for watching.